I still remember that day vividly, the day everything in my life began to crack in a way that could never be mended. It was a late autumn afternoon in Ohio, the sky overcast and gray, heavy clouds hanging low as if weighing down the entire city. At the time, I was Declan Miller, 36 years old, working as an internal auditor for a company in Columbus, and I had no idea that in just a few short hours my family would take a completely different turn. My job was stable, but it never excited me. It was just numbers, reports, and precision down to the last cent. That morning my phone rang loudly, pulling me from a fitful sleep. It was my father, John Miller, his voice urgent and tense like a string about to snap. "Declan, you have to come to Dayton this afternoon. No excuses. This is an important family matter." He didn't say more, just hung up after repeating the order twice. My heart pounded. I had no idea what was happening. My father wasn't the type to make casual calls. He was always direct, sometimes to the point of harshness. I quickly wrapped up work, took half a day off, and jumped into my old Ford. The drive from Columbus to Dayton was only about an hour, but that day it felt endless. I turned on the radio to dispel the anxiety, but the upbeat pop songs only made me more irritable. I wondered if it was something wrong with my mother's health, Harper Miller, or maybe Dad was in financial trouble. Our house in Dayton was a simple 2-story wooden home, where I grew up with mixed memories, cozy family dinners around the table, but also full of arguments about money and responsibility. Logan, my younger brother, was always at the center of every problem. He was 5 years younger than me, but from childhood he had been spoiled by our parents. As the eldest, all expectations fell on my shoulders. Study hard, work diligently, be stable. Logan? He was the creative genius, always dreaming big but never following through. As I turned onto the familiar street, the sun was setting behind the bare trees. The house appeared with warm lights from the windows, but I sensed a heavy atmosphere. I parked, took a deep breath, and walked in. The door was unlocked. My parents still kept that habit, as if Dayton were the safest place in the world. I pushed open the living room door and immediately froze. Logan was sitting there, dressed sharply in a shiny gray suit and a bright red tie, with that familiar confident demeanor that made me want to turn and leave right away. He grinned widely, waving as if we were old friends who hadn't seen each other in years. "Declan, you're here. Great." His voice was sweet, but I knew what lay behind it. Dad sat on the old sofa, face stern, while Mom beside him had red eyes as if she'd been crying. Dad ordered me to sit down, his voice low but authoritative. No warm greetings, no questions about my work or life in Columbus. He got straight to the point, as if this were a business meeting rather than a family gathering. "Logan is pursuing a groundbreaking startup project. It needs significant capital, and it has to launch now or the opportunity will be lost. This is your brother's future." Mom immediately chimed in, voice trembling but resolute. "We've already poured in all our savings, son. The money your dad always called our safety net for old age. But we're still short about $300,000. You have to contribute, Declan, for Logan's future." I went numb, as if someone had punched me in the chest. My parents had never touched their savings. Dad always taught us it was the last resort for retirement. And now, they were willing to throw it all away for one of Logan's groundbreaking projects, and then asking me for $300,000 more. That was a huge sum for me, nearly everything I'd saved after years of hard work. I looked at Logan and he just smiled as if everything were normal. It didn't take me long to think. These kinds of projects from Logan weren't new. He talked about a world-changing mobile app, then a fast delivery startup, then virtual real estate, all ideas that sounded great but never went anywhere. Each time he promised massive profits, then disappeared with borrowed money from friends or banks, leaving debts that my parents had to shoulder. Logan started rambling excitedly, voice enthusiastic as if pitching to investors. "Listen, Declan, this project is about blockchain technology combined with e-commerce. We'll create a platform where people can buy and sell goods without intermediaries, completely secure. Profits: at least double the investment in the first year." I already have partners in Silicon Valley. We just need the capital to explode. This isn't some vague idea, bro. This is the future. My parents listened raptly. Dad's eyes lit up with hope, while Mom nodded continuously as if Logan were describing a great invention. See, Declan? Our Logan is so talented. He dares to think big, dares to take risks, unlike some people who just play it safe. Mom said, voice full of pride. I felt blood rush to my face. In complete contrast to them, I just shook my head and refused firmly. No, Mom and Dad. This project is too vague. No clear plan, no financial reports, nothing. I need that money for my own future. I can't take that risk. Dad slammed his hand on the table, the sharp sound echoing in the already cramped and heavy living room. His face flushed red with anger, eyes full of disappointment and fury directed at me. You're selfish, he said loudly. Do you only think about yourself, Declan? This is family, not your accounting ledgers. You're the eldest. You have a responsibility to support your brother. He gritted his teeth, voice lowering but even more frightening. Living like that, you're not worthy of being the eldest son. The air in the room froze. I stood still, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I had never seen my father so angry and bitter, as if all the accumulated disappointments over the years were being unleashed on me in this moment. Mom immediately spoke up, fully siding with Logan. Tears fell from her eyes, but her gaze was full of reproach. She said, voice trembling but unwavering, "That's right. You're jealous of your brother, aren't you? Logan dares to think big, dares to risk, dares to dream. And you? You always just play it safe for yourself." She shook her head, sighing heavily. "Do you want to see your brother fail just to prove you're right?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. I said slowly, "Mom, Dad, I'm not jealous of Logan at all. I'm just looking at this realistically." I looked straight at them. How many projects has Logan done? Each time promising the world but always ending in debt and failure. And every time, who cleans up the mess? Who bears the consequences? Dad waved his hand, cutting me off rudely. "I don't need to hear those arguments," he said. "No more discussion. You have to contribute. This is my decision." Mom burst into sobs, hands clasped tightly, choking out, "I beg you, son. Just this once. We're family. You can't turn your back on your brother." Logan finally spoke, voice soft and familiar in front of our parents. "Mom, Dad, Declan has his reasons," he said, bowing his head in feigned humility. "I don't blame him. But without this money, my opportunity will slip away." Then he looked up at me. For a split second, his eyes flashed cold and pressing. A silent warning I knew all too well. I realized I had been familiar with this moment for a long time. Logan was always protected, forgiven, given more chances, while I had to be right, perfect, and never say no. The tension rose until my chest felt heavy. But this time I didn't back down. I said, voice slow and clear, "I'm sorry, Mom and Dad, but I can't help Logan." The room fell into deadly silence. Dad stood abruptly, his eyes turning terrifyingly cold. "If you won't help," he said word by word, "then from now on we have no relationship. Don't consider us your parents anymore." Mom nodded along, tears still falling but her voice unusually firm. "That's right. Leave, Declan. We don't need a son like you." I stood still for a moment, throat choked. "Have you ever asked me once," I said hoarsely, "how I've had to live to stand on my own all these years?" Dad turned away, waving dismissively. He replied coldly, "I don't need to know. An eldest son isn't allowed to calculate. Sacrificing for your brother is your duty." I let out a short, bitter laugh and asked, "And what about me? Have I ever been allowed to fail? Or is that privilege only for Logan?" Mom shook her head, voice choking. "Don't say more. From childhood, you've always calculated and played safe. Logan is different. He dares to risk." I asked again. "He risks with whose money? With yours? With your future?" Logan frowned, his soft tone no longer holding. "Stop it, bro. You always think you're the only one who's right. I looked straight at Logan, unflinching. I said slowly, "No, I'm just the only one here who dares to say no." Dad pointed straight at the door. "I don't want to hear another word from you. Get out of my house right now." I nodded, feeling both pain and emptiness inside. "I'll go, but today it's not me abandoning the family. It's the family choosing to abandon me." I was stunned, as if struck by lightning. Pain spread through my body, but I stayed silent, no defense. I turned and left the house, their scolding echoing behind. Ungrateful. Get out of my house. The feeling of being erased from the family left me reeling. I got in the car, drove into the darkness, tears streaming down my cheeks. That was the beginning of the nightmare. In the days that followed, I lived like a lost soul. Every morning, waking up in my small apartment in Columbus, I stared blankly at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that it had all been just a bad dream. But then the phone would ring, and reality slapped me in the face like a harsh blow. The first call came just 3 days later from my father. His voice was still sharp, without a single word of concern. "Declan, have you reconsidered? Logan needs the money urgently. Don't let the family fall apart because of your selfishness." I gripped the phone tightly, heart pounding, but replied briefly, "Dad, I'm not changing my decision." No argument, no explanation. I hung up, feeling as if I were cutting off a part of my own body. Mom called next, her voice trembling, laced with reproach and pleading. "Son, I can't sleep worrying about Logan. Just help this once and everything will be fine. How can you do this?" Once again, I refused outright. "I'm sorry, Mom, but I really can't do that." Those calls were short, but they left deep wounds, keeping me awake at night, my mind spinning with questions. Why don't they understand? Why do I always have to be the one to sacrifice? Gradually, the calls became less frequent, but the pressure remained the same. Dad yelling, Mom crying, but I held my ground, responding with cold refusals. I didn't want to argue because I knew it would be pointless. They had chosen Logan, and I was the outsider. After about 3 months, the final call came from Mom, her voice weary. "Declan, this is the last chance. If you don't help, don't blame us." I repeated, "I've made my decision and I won't change it." And then there were no more calls. That silence was a subtle punishment, sharper than any scolding. It made me feel like a ghost, erased from their lives. Every evening I checked my phone, hoping for a message asking how I was, but there was only emptiness. My heart ached, but gradually I realized this was their way of punishing me for daring not to submit. And perhaps it was also my way of protecting myself. With that void, I poured all my energy into work. As an internal auditor, I was already used to dry numbers, but now they became my only anchor. I started working overtime, volunteering for extra responsibilities. My boss, Mr. Harris, was surprised to see me in the office late. "Declan, are you planning to live here?" I forced a smile. "Just want to finish things early, boss." In truth, work was how I controlled my life. Every completed report, every balanced figure gave me a sense of security, the thing my family had taken away. I checked my bank account daily, calculating expenses meticulously. Frugality became a way of life. No flashy shopping, no eating out unless necessary, avoiding all financial risks. I cut out daily coffee runs, brewing at home instead, canceled my gym membership to jog in the park. Every dollar saved was a brick building my future. Perhaps a small house, a solid retirement fund. I planned long-term, investing in safe index funds, earning additional auditing certifications for promotion. On late nights, sitting at the computer with Excel spreadsheets, I felt a strange peace. This was my world, where no one could intrude and destroy it. But then social media became an uninvited tormentor. I wasn't the type addicted to Facebook or Instagram, but occasionally I scrolled for news, and that's when Logan's images hit me like a storm. My brother posted constantly. A shiny Mercedes parked in front of a high-rise office, partying with friends at upscale bars. Endless updates boasting about project expansions. My team just signed a big deal. Startup life such success, he wrote, with photos of himself grinning beside cocktails. His office looked like something from a Hollywood movie. Walnut desks, large screens, young employees laughing. Each time I scrolled past, my heart tightened. Not jealousy, God, no. I knew what lay behind that glossy facade. Debts, empty promises, and my parents pouring everything into it. I glanced briefly, then closed the app, suspicion surging. The kids bragging again, I muttered to myself. Logan was always good at showing off. From childhood, he knew how to make our parents proud with colorful stories. But I, with my simple life in Columbus, a one-bedroom apartment, home-cooked meals, weekends reading books, felt like the real winner. At least I wasn't living a lie. Time passed and the cutoff from my parents became complete. No birthday wishes, no Christmas calls, nothing. As if I had never existed. My heart ached whenever I thought about it, but I tried to push it down. To test it, I drove back to Dayton a few times. The first, about 6 months later, I parked in front of the old house on a Sunday afternoon. Heart racing, I knocked, hoping for a welcoming smile, but the door stayed shut. I called, no answer. I stood there, cold autumn wind blowing, disappointment surging like a wave. The second time I brought pastries, Mom's favorite, but again, silence. Windows lit, I heard laughter inside, but when I called out, everything went dark. I turned away, tears welling, driving back to Columbus in the darkness, wondering what I had done wrong. Those visits ended in silence and disappointment, making me realize they didn't want me anymore. It was a harsh truth, and it made me stronger but lonelier than ever. Then once on a business trip passing through Dayton, not to visit home, just coincidentally, I stopped at a familiar cafe near the old neighborhood. As I walked in, I heard a surprised voice. It was Mrs. Ellis, the neighbor who had watched me grow up. "Declan, long time no see," she smiled, but her eyes held a mix of familiarity and awkwardness. We chatted superficially, work, life. Then she slowly shared that my parents often spoke of Logan with undisguised pride. She said they bragged about his big projects, luxurious life, fancy car, and that betting everything on him was the best decision of their lives. Putting their future on the line, she quoted them exactly as if it were a phrase they cherished. She continued, "And you? They say you lack vision, are selfish, not worth expecting anything from. Sorry, dear, but you know them. They're always proud of Logan." Those words reached me incidentally without anger or resentment. Just cold confirmation, in the family I was the villain, the obstacle to Logan's star success. I smiled politely at Mrs. Ellis, thanked her, and left. On the drive back, cold wind rushed through the car window. I wondered, how could they say that? But then I let it all go. It wasn't worth my concern anymore. Back in Columbus, I continued building my own life quietly and disciplinedly. My work progressed noticeably. I got a raise for consistent, steady performance. I opened a new savings account, proactively planning short solo trips to regain balance after prolonged stress. I no longer waited for recognition or praise from those who had turned their backs. Every evening, sitting by the window, watching the city lights come on, I felt a clear sense of freedom I'd never had before. Yet deep inside, the pain still smoldered. The pain of a son abandoned by his own flesh and blood family. My life and Logan's grew increasingly contrasting. He chose flashiness and risk. I chose quiet and safety. Between us wasn't just a difference in lifestyle, but a vast chasm created by betrayal within the family. I didn't know where the future would take me, but at that time, I understood clearly that I had no choice but to keep moving forward step by step, as the nightmare of my family gradually took clearer shape day by day. The years that followed passed in quietude, like a calm river with hidden undercurrents. I maintained my old routine in Columbus, auditing work with precise numbers, solitary evenings with books and black coffee. But then life unexpectedly brought a ray of light named Rachel. I met her on a rainy afternoon at a small cafe near the office. I was sitting in a corner reviewing reports on my laptop when she walked in, drenched but still smiling radiantly. Rachel was an elementary school teacher, 32 years old with lightly curly brown hair and warm green eyes. She asked to borrow the chair next to me because the place was crowded, and from there our conversation began. At first, our talks revolved around casual topics like Ohio weather, then gradually deepened as we discussed favorite books and movies. I wasn't the type to open up easily to others, but with Rachel, everything felt strangely natural. Rachel brought me a rare sense of peace after years of family tension. The silent calls from my parents and Logan's flashy posts faded whenever I was with her. Rachel didn't pressure me to share or judge what I'd been through. She just listened quietly, and her presence made me feel truly seen and respected. Our love developed slowly and simply, without ostentation, built on mutual respect, listening, and trust. No lavish trips or expensive gifts. We often strolled in the park, cooked together in my cramped kitchen, or talked for hours about dreams. Rachel shared stories about her students, mischievous but lovable kids, and I talked about work. Dry numbers but secure. Gradually, I opened up more. One evening, as we sat on the sofa with rain pattering outside the window, I decided to tell her everything. "Rachel, I have a really complicated family." I recounted the old argument, how my parents chose Logan and disowned me, the pressure calls that went silent. No embellishment, no hiding. I told it all, voice trembling, eyes fixed on the darkness outside. My heart raced, fearing she'd turn away, but Rachel just held my hand tighter. Rachel didn't judge or demand explanations. She simply stayed by my side, becoming a solid emotional support, helping me gradually release the guilt that had never truly been mine. She told me gently but firmly that she understood that it wasn't my fault, that everyone had chosen their own path and I had the right to choose my life too. Those words came softly like cool water, quietly soothing wounds that had lingered too long. She didn't try to fix me, she was just there, listening on sleepless nights when memories resurfaced, encouraging when I hesitated about the future. Gradually, the guilt that I was selfish, that I had abandoned the family, faded. Rachel helped me realize I wasn't the betrayer, I was just protecting myself. Those conversations lasted hours, sometimes mixed with tears, but always ending in smiles. She became my anchor, making me eagerly anticipate each new day together. After some time, we moved toward marriage, choosing a small, cozy wedding in a simple church. It was spring when cherry blossoms bloomed in Ohio. We didn't want extravagance, just about 50 guests, no lavish party. Rachel and I picked a small church on the outskirts of Columbus with old wooden pews and sunlight filtering through stained glass windows. I still sent invitations to my parents and Logan, though I couldn't hide my nervousness. I told myself maybe they'd change, maybe this time they'd come. But deep down, I knew how slim the chance was. The invitations went out with a few short lines I'd agonized over. "I hope you'll come." Then came prolonged silence, no response, no call or message. I tried not to dwell on it too long. I pushed aside the disappointment and focused on the joy ahead, reminding myself that no matter what, my new life was moving forward. That morning I woke early, put on a simple gray suit, heart fluttering with excitement, and entered the warm church filled with the scent of fresh flowers and soft organ music playing in the quiet space, where our wedding took place, with friends, colleagues from both sides, and Rachel's parents, who welcomed me with genuine respect. Her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, hugged me tightly and said, "Welcome, son. We're proud of you." That unconditional warmth moved me. Rachel entered in a simple white dress, beautiful like an angel, and in that moment all my worries seemed to vanish. We exchanged vows, laughter echoing through the church. But then, as the ceremony began, the harsh reality hit. Throughout the service, no one from my family appeared, despite my prior notice. The seats reserved for them were empty. No dad, no mom, no Logan. I glanced over, my heart constricted. Everyone around smiled and chatted, but I felt isolated in the crowd. The moment I realized the family side was empty, I felt ashamed and out of place at my own wedding, and that silence pulled me back to old memories. They really didn't come to my wedding, I thought, face burning. It felt like all eyes were on that void, though they weren't. My heart raced, cold sweat broke out. Rachel held my hand, whispering, "Are you okay?" I nodded, but my mind drifted to the past like an old film rewinding. I remembered the years of constant comparison to my brother when my efforts in school and work were taken for granted, while any new attempt by Logan was seen as a sign of talent and a bright future. From childhood, I was the good son. I studied hard for scholarships, worked part-time to help the family. But my parents just nodded approvingly, nothing more. Logan was different. If he scribbled a few lines on paper, Mom smiled proudly and said her son was talented, destined to be a famous artist. I still recalled family dinners in the familiar kitchen when I shared high grades and Dad just said briefly, "Good grades are expected of you." But when Logan boasted his first business idea, selling candy to classmates, both parents beamed, praising how daring and business-savvy he was. Those silent comparisons were like small but sharp knife cuts, gradually wounding me over the years. They made me try harder, live more cautiously, but no matter what, I never felt enough in their eyes. I recalled life milestones, graduation, first job, moments when my parents were often absent. Their attention poured into Logan's yet unformed plans. On college graduation day, I stood on stage, eyes instinctively searching the audience, harboring faint hope they'd be there. But the family seats were empty. Parents busy taking Logan to some talent contest. "Sorry, son, but your brother needs our encouragement," Mom said over the phone. When I got my first job in Columbus, I called to share the joy. But Dad responded curtly and indifferently, as if it were nothing, then quickly shifted to Logan's upcoming big startup. I also realized I was always required to be stable, sacrificial, and infallible, while Logan's risks and failures were excused as still young. "Declan, you're the eldest. You have to set an example for your brother," Dad often said. I wasn't allowed to fail, a single failed test, and Mom scolded, "How could you fail?" But Logan? He dropped out, racked up debts, failed project after project, and they just smiled. "Logan's still young. A little failure is fine. Let him try. How else will he learn?" I sacrificed study abroad dreams to stay and help, but Logan had freedom. That injustice built up, making me anxiously await an explosion, and it came with the old argument. Back to reality, I clearly felt the difference as Rachel held my hand throughout, while her parents treated me with empathy and understanding, no conditions. Rachel squeezed my hand, pulling me from memories. The Thompsons patted my shoulder. "From today, you no longer have to stand alone. Family is where you belong, not where you have to prove anything." That warmth contrasted completely, nearly bringing tears. The ceremony ended in applause, and I decided to leave the past behind, focusing on building my small family where I was loved for who I am. We stepped out of the church, confetti flying, and I thought, this is a new beginning. But deep down, anxiety lingered. Would the past return? Life after the wedding unfolded peacefully, like a beautiful dream I had never dared to imagine. 4 years passed quickly, and I lived a stable, happy life with Rachel. We moved to a smaller house in the suburbs of Columbus, where the air was fresher and close to a park for our weekend walks. My auditing job remained solid. I was promoted to manager with a salary sufficient for us to live comfortably without financial worries. True joy doubled when we welcomed Lily, our firstborn daughter. Lily was born on a summer morning with big round eyes like Rachel's and a smile that melted my heart. Her arrival gave me a sense of completeness and meaning I had never known before. Before Lily, I always felt something missing in my life. Stable work, love with Rachel, but still a void from the old family's betrayal. Now, holding Lily in my arms, listening to her soft cries, I realized this was my real family. I spent hours playing with her, changing diapers, lulling her to sleep, and every moment filled me with extraordinary happiness. Rachel and I cared for Lily together, sharing sleepless nights and her first smiles. Our daughter made me stronger, more determined to protect this peace. We often took Lily to the park, watching her toddle on the green grass, and I thought, this is all I need. Those years, the anxiety about the past. That joy doubled when we decided to buy a small house, the fruit of years of careful saving. It was a 2-story wooden home in a quiet area of Columbus, with a backyard large enough for Lily to play and a cozy kitchen where Rachel loved experimenting with recipes. We had saved every penny, avoiding unnecessary expenses, and finally, after so much effort, we signed the contract. On moving day, I carried Lily in my arms, Rachel beaming beside me, and we felt this was our true home, a secure foundation for our daughter's future. I repainted Lily's room in soft pink, installed a security system, and every evening the family gathered in the living room, listening to laughter echo through the modest space. The house wasn't large or luxurious like the things Logan once flaunted on social media, but it was ours, built with sweat, patience, and genuine love. Sometimes I stood by the window, breathing in the peaceful air, telling myself this was the reward for all the quiet sacrifices before. My life was stable, not flashy or risky, but safe enough to protect those I loved, and for me that was enough. But then, one quiet evening changed everything. It was a chilly autumn night, and I was playing with Lily in the living room. She was 3 years old, stacking wooden blocks into a towering structure, giggling every time I pretended to be surprised. Rachel was in the kitchen preparing dinner with the delicious aroma of roasted meat filling the air. The peaceful atmosphere enveloped us. Soft music played from the radio, and I felt complete happiness. Suddenly, the phone on the table vibrated, shattering the tranquility entirely. I glanced at the screen and my heart seemed to stop. The caller ID read John, my father, the man who had cut off contact for years, as if I had never existed in his life. For 4 years, no calls, no messages, nothing. Now this number appeared, leaving me stunned. My hands trembled, my mind raced with questions. Why now? What had happened? Despite the surprise and wariness, I answered, curious and with a faint hope that perhaps this was a belated apology. But immediately I was met with the familiar authoritarian tone without a single greeting or concern. He didn't say, "How are you?" or "Long time no see." Dad got straight to the point, his voice urgent and commanding. "Declan, Logan is in big trouble. He's bankrupt after a series of failed projects. Debts are piling up. He needs your help now." I went numb, unable to react. Logan bankrupt? The groundbreaking projects my parents had bet everything on had collapsed? I tried to stay calm, but Dad gave me no chance. "You have to take responsibility. Sell the house you're living in and use the money to pay off your brother's debts. This is a family matter. You can't turn a blind eye." I froze at the demand, realizing all my hard work, sacrifices, and stability built over years were being treated as something to trade away once more. Sell this new house? The one Rachel and I had saved for years, where Lily was growing up, where we had built our happiness? It wasn't just bricks and mortar, it was the symbol of our new life. My heart constricted, blood rushed to my face. "I can't sell the house to help my brother," I replied firmly, voice trembling but resolute. "I have my own family now with Lily. I can't sacrifice everything for Logan anymore." Dad's voice turned bitter and accusatory, relentlessly blaming. "You're ungrateful. You're willing to let the family collapse because of your selfishness? We raised you, and now you turn your back?" Mom's sobbing came through loudly in the background, pleading and reproachful. "Declan, I beg you. Logan is your brother. You can't abandon him like this." The emotional pressure weighed heavily on me like a raging wave, making it hard to breathe. The call ended with a chilling threat when Dad implied that if I continued refusing, serious trouble would follow and I'd bear the consequences myself, before hanging up coldly without letting me respond. "You'll regret this decision," he growled. Then the beep sounded. I stood frozen in the living room, phone still clenched in my hand, unease spreading through my body. Anxiety surged. What serious trouble? What would they do? Rachel came from the kitchen, seeing my face and worrying. "Declan, what's wrong?" I told her everything, voice choking, and she hugged me tightly. They pulled me back to reality, helping me calm down and realize what I needed to protect. Now wasn't the past, but the family right in front of me. But that night I couldn't sleep, anxiously awaiting what was to come. In the days following that call, the real nightmare began. My father and mother called and texted relentlessly, taking turns to pressure me, sometimes blaming, sometimes pleading, sometimes accusing, leaving me no true moment of peace. Early in the morning, as I was just waking up and brewing coffee, the phone would ring. It was Dad. "Declan, have you thought it over? Logan is dying slowly because of the debts. You have to sell the house right now." His voice was harsh and commanding, giving me no chance to breathe. I refused. "I can't sell the house, Dad. If I do, where will my family live?" He yelled, "You're ungrateful. We sacrificed for you and now you abandon your brother." Less than an hour later, Mom texted, "Son, I can't sleep worrying about Logan. Please sell the house, save your brother. I beg you." Those messages came in waves mixed with photos they sent of Logan looking devastated. He sat in an empty office, face downcast. I read them with a heavy heart but remained resolute, not responding. By afternoon, Dad called again, voice full of reproach and blame. "It's because you wouldn't help from the start that Logan ended up like this. Do you really want to watch the family fall apart?" Those words hit like a storm, relentless and suffocating. The non-stop pressure left me in constant tension, always checking my phone, half afraid of missing a call, half dreading hearing more familiar accusations I knew I couldn't change. At the same time, Logan started contacting me directly, sounding broken and begging for help, constantly emphasizing his dire situation, but every plea carried the familiar tone of insincerity and avoidance of responsibility. He called during lunch, voice artificially trembling. "Declan, I'm really at the end of my rope. The project's collapsed, debts are overwhelming. Help me just this once. Sell that house. I promise I'll find a way to pay you back." Hearing it made me nauseous. He didn't apologize for the past, didn't admit mistakes, just stressed the urgency as if it were everyone else's fault. His texts were full of crying emojis. "Bro, creditors are threatening me. If I don't pay, they'll come after the family." But I'd known Logan since childhood. He was great at acting, dodging blame. In every call, he evaded details. "I don't want to go into it, but you have to trust me." His pressure made me anxious, wondering, is it real this time? But deep down, I knew it was the old tactic. The relentless onslaught left me in prolonged stress, sleepless and always on guard, as if a threat could strike any time. At night, I tossed and turned, mind reeling from Dad's threats. What did serious trouble mean? What would they do? I woke with dark circles under my eyes. Coffee no longer helped. At the office, I lost focus, constantly checking my phone, fearing new messages. Colleagues asked, "You okay, Declan?" I forced a smile. "I'm fine, don't worry." But inside, I was burning, anxiously awaiting the next blow. Every sound, the doorbell, a car outside, made me jump. The stable life I'd built now felt like a thin thread ready to snap at any moment. Amid that time, Lily, with her innocent questions and constant affection, became the rare anchor helping me maintain some normalcy under the mounting pressure. She'd run to hug me every morning. "Daddy, what are we playing today?" Her naive questions like, "Why are you sad today, Daddy?" made me smile, forgetting the stress. We played with blocks, read books, and Lily's laughter became a healing remedy for those tense days. One evening, when the pressure was nearly suffocating, Lily gently tugged my hand and said, "Daddy, tell me a fairy tale." I started telling Little Red Riding Hood, voice slower than usual, and soon she fell asleep on my shoulder. That moment brought brief but precious peace. Lily was the reason I stayed strong, the only light amid the encroaching darkness. Rachel was always by my side, quietly encouraging and reassuring, helping me stay calm against the relentless mental assaults from my old family. She patiently listened to everything, then hugged me tightly and said, "You're not alone. We'll face this together." Rachel reminded me they had no right to force me, that this was our home and no one could cross that boundary. She quietly cared for the family, cooking my favorite meals, taking Lily out to play so I could rest and regain balance. Rachel's presence and support made me stronger each day. Yet alongside it, a lingering worry persisted. whether this pressure would start affecting my wife and daughter, and what I'd have to do to shield them from undeserved consequences. One evening, as the family was having dinner in what seemed like a calm atmosphere, a sudden frantic knocking at the door interrupted everything. We were laughing, Lily telling school stories, when the loud knock startled me. I went to open the door and froze, seeing my parents standing on the porch unannounced, their eyes and demeanor suggesting they viewed this place as somewhere they could show up any time. Dad pushed past and entered. Mom followed, face flushed. "Declan, we're here. We need to talk this out." They walked into the living room and sat down like they owned the place. They immediately returned to the old topic without greetings or beating around the bush, insisting I had to sell the house to save Logan. Dad spoke loudly, voice harsh and pressing word by word. "You have to sell this house now. Logan is at the end of his rope. He's dying day by day, do you understand? This isn't a choice. It's your responsibility to the family." Mom burst into sobs, crying as she approached me, voice trembling and desperate. "Son, I beg you. Just this once. Sell the house and everything will be okay. I can't take it anymore." I took a deep breath, glancing at Lily trembling in Rachel's arms, then faced my parents. "I've said it clearly," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice calm. "I won't sell the house. This isn't something that can be forced." Dad slammed his hand on the table, the sharp sound echoing in the quiet room. "Who do you think you are to defy your parents? I say sell and you sell, got it? You need to leave the house right now. This is my home and my family's. If you don't go, I'll call the police for trespassing." I said it without backing down, fully aware this was the final boundary I had to draw to protect my wife and child. My parents left in anger, carrying vague but chilling threats, as if this confrontation was just the beginning. Dad growled, "You'll regret this." Mom cried, "You're so cruel." When the door closed, I stood motionless in the living room, realizing the boundary between my old family and my current one had been seriously violated, and from that moment I knew I had no choice but to protect my wife and child at all costs. Anxiety surged, but I was determined. Lily's cries still echoed in my head, and Rachel's worried eyes pierced my heart. My parents hadn't just threatened from afar, they had stormed right into our home, turning our sanctuary into a battlefield. I held Rachel and Lily tighter, whispering, "I won't let this happen again." But that night I tossed and turned, unable to sleep, my mind swirling with images. Dad slamming the table, Mom sobbing, and the vague threat, "You'll regret this." I wondered, where would they stop? Would they come back, this time with Logan? Or worse, harm Lily? A sense of unease enveloped me like a shadow, keeping me awake all night, listening to every small sound outside. The following nights were the same, restless cold sweat despite the warm room. I tried to act normal during the day, dropping Lily at preschool, working with familiar auditing numbers, but my mind stayed on alert. After many such nights, I decided to discuss the house frankly with Rachel. It was a quiet evening with Lily fast asleep in her room. We sat on the sofa, holding hot tea, and I began, "Rachel, I don't feel safe here anymore. My parents, they won't stop. They've invaded our home once, and I'm afraid there'll be a second time." I shared all my worries, the pressure calls, their aggression, the threats. Rachel listened, eyes full of concern but resolute. I admitted the house, symbol of our built stability, was now tainted by the past. I proposed selling the house and moving elsewhere to end the harassment completely, seeing it as the only way to protect my wife and child amid escalating tension. We sell it and move farther away, so they can't find us anymore. I don't want Lily growing up in fear. My heart pounded saying it, fearing Rachel's opposition. This house held memories, Lily's first steps, cozy dinners, the small garden we planted ourselves. But Rachel didn't hesitate, supporting my decision, prioritizing our family's safety and peace over material attachments. "You're right, Declan. The house is just property. What matters is we have each other. Let's do this for Lily." She hugged me, and in that moment I felt relief mixed with anxiety. We planned immediately. Find a reliable agent, but keep it absolutely secret. We quietly listed the house below market price for a quick sale, minimizing the chance of my parents discovering it. No public ads, just contacting a few potential buyers through the agent. 10% below market, a sacrifice, but necessary for speed. Every viewing, I anxiously checked for signs from Dayton. Rachel handled paperwork. I managed finances. The deal closed swiftly in just 2 weeks. The buyers, a young couple, thrilled with the bargain. Title transfer signed fully at the notary, and I sighed in relief holding the contract. We moved out immediately without delay. We temporarily rented a house 40 to 50 miles away, far enough to avoid surprise visits, taking only essentials, a few clothes and personal items. The new place in a small town near the Ohio border with peaceful air and friendly neighbors. Quick packing. Lily cried over leaving favorite toys, but we comforted. "We'll buy new ones, sweetie." I took my work laptop, Rachel her teaching books, and a few mementos like our wedding photo. First days in the rental, we adapted fast, setting up Lily's room, basic shopping. I felt safer, but still anxious. Would they find us? Rachel encouraged, "We did the right thing. Now let's live in peace." Less than a week later, as we were settling in, I unexpectedly got a call from local police, reporting severe vandalism at the house under the new owner's name and requesting my presence for related information. The phone rang early morning, the officer's voice serious. "Mr. Miller, we need you at the old address immediately. There's vandalism, and you're the former owner." I was stunned, hands shaking as I hung up. Vandalism? Who could do that? My heart raced. I quickly told Rachel I had to go. Something happened at the old house. She worriedly urged caution and to call back. I drove back with a chaotic mind, not understanding what occurred after we left. The highway seemed endless. Cold wind rushed through the window, and I anxiously imagined the worst. Maybe burglars. Arriving, I saw police and the buyers already there, tense atmosphere enveloping the area. Police cars parked outside, the young buyer pale, standing by the officer. "You're Miller? Come in and see," the officer said. I stepped inside and froze, witnessing the destruction. Furniture smashed to pieces, floors scratched with deep cuts, living room chaotic with overturned sofa, bedrooms ransacked with bedding tossed, kitchen a mess of shattered dishes. Spray paint and burnt wood smells filled the air. My heart constricted. This was once my home, now a battlefield. The buyer furious. "We just moved in and now this." I was shocked, speechless. Police took my statement, cross-checking timeline, handover condition, and completed legal procedures. I explained. When sold, how handed over, no items left. They noted, asking details. "Any enemies?" I shook my head, but suspected my parents. They reviewed neighbor security cameras and the system I'd installed, piecing together the incident. The officer viewed footage on a laptop. "Do you recognize them?" I looked at the screen and my heart stopped. Images of my parents breaking in through the back door, wielding baseball bats, smashing things, mom spraying paint on walls. All evidence pointed to one conclusion. The intruders and vandals were my own parents. John and Harper were quickly summoned and faced with clear evidence, forced to confess fully to trespassing and property destruction. I was called to the station to hear it. Dad sat there, face aged, Mom sobbing. In their statements, John and Harper claimed they didn't know I'd sold the house, admitting their sole intent was psychological pressure to force me to sell for Logan's rescue money without foreseeing legal consequences. Dad said, "We thought it was still his house, just wanted to scare him into selling to save his brother." Mom cried, "To save Logan from debts, we had no other way." I listened in numb silence. Hearing it, I stood motionless, emptiness spreading through my body, realizing that blood tie had officially crossed an irreparable boundary. Initial anxiety now turned to pain. They hadn't just disowned me, they had destroyed. I left the station, drove away, tears streaming. A new life awaited, but this wound would last forever. The Ohio highway at dusk seemed endlessly long, cold wind rushing through the slightly open window, carrying the smell of damp earth after rain. I thought about my parents, the people who had once been my support, now strangers willing to destroy things to force compliance. A new life in the small town awaited me, with Rachel and Lily preparing a cozy dinner. But this wound would forever leave its mark, like a deep scar that never heals. I pulled over for a moment, wiped my tears, telling myself I have to be strong for my current family. But my heart was heavy, anxiously awaiting the next consequences. The case quickly went to court, and with clear evidence of trespassing and property damage, my parents were ordered to compensate the buyers for all losses. Just weeks after police gathered evidence, the local court scheduled the trial. I was summoned as a witness, though reluctantly. That day, I drove to the courthouse in Columbus, heart pounding the whole way. The courtroom was cramped, stuffy with the smell of old wood and paperwork. The buyers, the young couple, sat on one side, faces full of anger, recounting the horror of moving into their new home only to find ruins. The officer presented evidence. Security camera footage, neighbor statements, and fingerprints matching my parents. Their lawyer tried to defend. This was just a family misunderstanding, no intent to destroy. But the judge shook his head. The evidence is undeniable. Trespassing and intentional destruction are criminal acts. The verdict came swiftly. My parents had to pay full compensation, repairs, legal fees, and emotional damages totaling over $50,000. I sat there watching them bow their heads, heart torn between pain and relief. Anxiety surged. Was this the end? At the trial, all defenses proved meaningless against the security footage and consistent statements, forcing John and Harper to accept full legal responsibility. My father, usually authoritarian, sat silently as the video played. Him wielding a baseball bat, smashing the kitchen table, Mom spraying paint on walls. Their lawyer struggled, arguing clients didn't know the house was sold and only wanted to talk to their son. They had no intent to harm, he said. It was just a family meeting that crossed boundaries. But the prosecutor countered sharply. This wasn't talking. This was intentional trespassing and destruction. Mom cried throughout, repeating desperately that everything was to help Logan. We were just thinking of our son, she said through tears. The judge interrupted, voice cold and clear. Motive doesn't change the nature of the act. They didn't appeal. Ultimately, both signed commitment to full compensation per the ruling. I witnessed it all, heart aching like it was cut. Parents who taught me responsibility now pushed themselves into crime. As the trial ended, I stood watching them shuffle out, aged and weary figures contrasting the rigid imposition that once hurt me. Dad hunched, hair white, Mom leaning on him, slow steps to the door. No goodbye, no glance at me. I stood there, tears welling, anxiously wondering what would happen to them now. Not long after, I heard my parents had to sell their only house to cover the court-ordered compensation. The news came via a call from Mrs. Ellis, the old Dayton neighbor. Declan, dear, your parents sold the house. Sold it quickly, cheap for fast cash. She detailed. A hasty for sale sign, constant viewings, and in 1 month, new owners. I wasn't surprised, but it hurt. That house where I grew up, full of mixed memories, was now their only way to pay. Through public property transfer records and casual neighbor accounts, I confirmed the rushed sale. My parents quickly moved elsewhere. Mrs. Ellis added, they packed hurriedly, just a few suitcases, looked pitiful. I imagined it. Parents packing belongings, leaving the long-attached home, heart heavy. Anxiety rose thinking of their new life. Would they be okay? After legal costs and compensation, they couldn't afford another house, moving to a cheap rental to survive. From scattered info via acquaintances, I learned they rented a room in a rundown Dayton suburb. Cramped, moldy walls, no yard. My father, once proud of his retirement safety net, now lived frugally. Mrs. Ellis said, they rarely go out, look much older. Their old age quickly fell into hardship, struggle, and isolation. No stability or security as before. No morning coffee in a spacious kitchen, no familiar neighbors. My parents scrimped for food, medicine, bills. Through fragmented info, I learned remaining money after the sale went to Logan for debts. After deductions, about $20,000, not enough for a new house, but enough to bail Logan. Mrs. Ellis said, "They gave it all to Logan, saying for urgent debt payment." I wasn't surprised. Logan was always priority. From old family acquaintances, I heard my parents believed Logan's story of mafia threats, convinced that without payment, they'd be next targets. An old friend called, "Declan, your parents think Logan's chased by mafia." He said threats, and if unpaid, they'd come for the family. They're terrified. I was stunned. Mafia, or another Logan act. Out of love, fear for their safety, and belief in his familiar flowery words, my parents gave their last money hoping for peace. They handed it over, believing Logan would be fine, family safe. But I knew it was a mistake. Logan always promised like that, and it ended the same. Failure, debts, others bearing consequences. It all happened quietly as cascading results of years of wrong choices. From investing savings in Logan's projects to vandalizing my house, then selling theirs. A chain of unending mistakes. They did it secretly, not wanting others to know, but rumors spread. I knew everything, but after all that happened, I chose not to intervene, not to rescue, not to re-enter the sacrificial loop that once destroyed me. I could call, send money, but no. I remembered years of sacrifice, only betrayal. I continued life with wife and child, holding the boundary, understanding compassion no longer means bearing others' consequences. In the rental, we built peace. Lily playing, Rachel smiling, me working. The wound hurt, but I chose forward, anxious but resolute. The days that followed passed peacefully. Every morning, I took Lily to preschool. In the afternoon, I picked her up and listened to her innocent stories. In the evening, the family gathered around the dinner table in a serene atmosphere. I gradually believed that everything had truly come to an end. Logan had to face his debts. My parents bore the consequences of their choices, and that I could finally put it all behind me. Yet life rarely lets things end so simply. Just one small detail, seemingly insignificant, unexpectedly appeared and pulled me back into the vortex I thought I had escaped. It seemed everything had closed, until one day I overheard a detail that made me start doubting Logan's mafia debt story. It was a weekend afternoon when I visited a local fair to buy a birthday gift for Lily. I ran into Mr. Harris, my old boss at the auditing firm who had once done business with Logan on a joint project years ago. We greeted each other, chatted casually about work, and then he asked, "Have you heard anything about your brother? Logan, he's been appearing publicly in Columbus lately, living quite extravagantly. Fancy cars, parties, doesn't look like he's in any trouble." I froze, trying to keep a neutral face, but suspicion rose inside. "Logan extravagant?" Mr. Harris added, "Just last week I saw him on social media checking in at an upscale bar, grinning with friends. No sign of hiding or worry." My heart beat faster, anxiety crept in. If Logan was under serious mafia threat, as my parents said, why was he living so carefree? I thanked Mr. Harris and left with a chaotic mind, wondering if I was overthinking. That information confused me, as it completely contradicted the story Logan had told about serious mafia threats endangering the whole family. I recalled what my parents had shared through acquaintances. Logan being pursued, mafia threatening to come after the house, forcing them to give money for peace. But now Mr. Harris's details painted a different picture. Logan not hiding, living normally, even flaunting. That night I couldn't sleep, lying beside Rachel with my mind reeling. "I think Logan is lying to our parents," I whispered to her. Rachel listened and encouraged. "Maybe you should look into it more, but be careful." I decided not to act rashly, but anxiety kept rising, like a bad premonition approaching. In the following days, I discreetly checked Logan's social media. Indeed, he was still posting cars, parties, no signs of fear. The contradiction made me restless. What was he hiding? A few days later, while stopping at a familiar cafe near downtown Columbus, where I went to meet a work partner, I unexpectedly saw Logan sitting casually chatting with a stranger, atmosphere completely normal. The cafe was crowded, the smell of roasted coffee filling the air. grinding noises loud. I had just entered, about to order a latte, when I glimpsed Logan in a secluded corner, laughing animatedly with a middle-aged man in a cheap suit. My heart pounded. Was this a chance or a risk? Logan looked healthy, confident, nothing like someone fleeing the mafia. I turned away to avoid recognition, but unease urged me to choose a table nearby. Back turned, pretending to work on my laptop, concealing my presence while their conversation gradually reached my ears. I pulled my chair close to the wall, opened the laptop, feigning typing, ears straining. Anxiety peaked. My hands trembled, holding the coffee cup, fearing discovery but unable to miss it. I froze, hearing Logan clearly recount how he had fabricated the mafia story to pressure our parents into selling the house and giving him money for debts. His voice was smooth and chilling, even with a smug chuckle. "You remember how I talked to Mom and Dad?" Logan said, as if recounting a harmless prank. "I just made up the mafia death threat, said they'd come after the whole family if unpaid. They panicked immediately." He chuckled lightly, voice triumphant. "Sold the house fast, just a few pushes and done. They even scraped together the last 20 grand for me, easy as pie." Each word from Logan was like a knife, exposing the raw truth I hadn't dared face. The man opposite laughed loudly, curious. "How'd you pull that off?" Logan shrugged, answering coldly and ruthlessly. "I hired a buddy to make threatening calls, send messages like, 'Pay up or we'll come to your house.' Mom and Dad believed it, hook, line, and sinker, terrified for the family." He sneered and continued, boasting of victory. "Now they're renting, but in exchange I got money for real debts." I sat frozen, blood seeming to freeze, unable to believe what I'd heard. Initial anxiety quickly turned to choking rage. He had staged it all just to scam our own parents. Logan continued discussing with the man, faking creditors, calling and texting threats to another relative. "Now try Aunt Susan. I'll say mafia's after me, need money urgent. You play creditor, call threatening pay, or we'll come for your grandkids. She dotes on me. She'll give the money." The guy nodded. "Good idea. I'll get a new SIM. How much should we demand?" Logan grinned. "At least 10 grand for me." From Logan's smooth, cold manner, I realized this wasn't impulsive but a systematic scam. He calculated meticulously, no remorse, like a professional con artist. My heart raced, but I stayed calm, secretly recording the entire conversation on my phone hidden under the table, knowing this was direct, undeniable evidence of Logan deliberately fabricating to swindle relatives. Anxiety peaked as they stood to leave. I stopped recording, exhaled in relief, heart full of rage and resolve. The next day, I proactively met Logan for confrontation, bringing the recording as proof of what I'd heard. I called from an unknown number, arranging to meet at the Central Park, voice calm. "Logan, it's Declan. We need to talk." He agreed, perhaps thinking I'd softened. We met under green trees, chilly autumn wind blowing. Logan appeared with familiar confidence, wide grin as if everything was under control. "Finally reconsidered, huh?" he said lightly. "I knew it. You can't abandon family. I really need your help now." I didn't return the smile. I looked straight at Logan and got to the point, voice calm but cold. "Logan, I know everything. The whole mafia debt story was a play you staged. You exploited Mom and Dad's fear of family involvement to force them to sell the house and give you money." Logan froze momentarily, then forced a laugh. "What are you talking about? Who fed you nonsense?" I didn't argue further. "I heard it myself," I said slowly. "I heard you recount scaring Mom and Dad, hiring someone for calls and texts. Here's the recording." I played it. Logan's voice rang clear, unmistakable. The park fell silent. His face paled briefly, but in a few breaths, Logan reacted fiercely. "You're crazy? That voice isn't mine. You edited the recording to frame me, right?" He stood abruptly, voice rising. "You're always like this. Always jealous of me. Happy inside when I'm in trouble." I looked at Logan, not raising my voice. "Jealous of what?" I asked. "Jealous of you tricking Mom and Dad into selling the house, leaving them on the street?" Logan slammed the bench, face flushed with anger. You're the one who doesn't care about family. You just want to prove you're right no matter the cost." He pointed at my face, voice full of resentment. "If not for you, my life wouldn't be like this." I said nothing more. I just looked at Logan one last time, long enough to see no trace of remorse on his face, only the bitterness of someone cornered but clinging to his own lies. The confrontation ended there, not because I ran out of words, but because I understood that for Logan, truth never mattered as much as protecting his ego. I turned and left the park, the cold Ohio autumn wind whipping my face, carrying the smell of withered leaves and exhaust. Driving back to the rental home, my mind reeled with the recording still on my phone, undeniable evidence of my brother's deception. Rachel was waiting at home, Lily playing with toys, and when I told her everything, she hugged me tightly. "But what are you going to do next with that recording?" I didn't answer immediately, just sitting silently by the window, gazing at the peaceful street of the small town. In the days that followed, I pondered quietly, weighing every option. Resentment? Perhaps there was some, but it wasn't the main drive. I thought about my parents, about other relatives who might become the next victims of that mafia script. After many such days, sleepless nights, mornings with bitter coffee, I reached my final decision. Submit all the evidence to the police, not out of resentment, but to stop Logan from continuing to harm others with the same deceptive scheme. I drove to the local police station in Columbus on a drizzly morning, the recording and details I'd gathered tucked in my bag. My heart pounded the whole way, anxious and fearful. Would they believe me? Or dismiss it as family business? The officer handling the case, a middle-aged man named Mr. Ramirez, listened to my account with a serious expression. "Mr. Miller, this is a serious allegation. Organized fraud, fake threats. We'll investigate." I handed over the phone with the recording, detailing the cafe conversation, how Logan exploited our parents. Mr. Ramirez nodded. "We'll open an official investigation." I left the station feeling relief mixed with unease, anxiously awaiting what would happen. The police accepted the case, launched a formal investigation, successively summoning Logan and those who had participated in faking threats and supporting the mafia debt play. They worked quickly. Logan was called in first, then the man from the cafe. Turns out an old friend of his, specializing in acting for such scams. I was called as a witness, sitting in the interrogation room recounting everything, voice trembling but resolute. Anxiety peaked thinking of Logan's reaction. How would he deny it? Under investigative pressure and the recording evidence, Logan had no room to deny, forced to admit organized fraud, exploiting family fear to seize money. At first, he denied shrilly, "My brother made it up." But when police played the recording, cross-referenced threatening calls to our parents, and summoned the accomplice, who confessed everything fearing prison, Logan collapsed. He sat in the interrogation room, face ashen, admitting, "I just needed money urgently. Didn't think the consequences would be this serious." The investigation expanded, revealing the severity. Logan hadn't just scammed our parents, but tried the same script on a few other relatives, hiring calls and terror texts, then taking life-saving money. Total embezzled amount reached tens of thousands. Police found bank records proving he spent it on parties, cars, not real debts. I heard from Mr. Ramirez, heart full of anxiety and outrage. "It's organized fraud, Mr. Miller, not his first offense." The trial followed, where the full truth was exposed before the law. No room for the favoritism that once existed in the family. The courtroom in Columbus was crowded, with local media covering the family fraud case. I sat as witness, recounting everything, from old startup projects to the recent recording. The prosecutor presented evidence, recording, accomplice statements, bank records. Logan's lawyer tried defending. Defendant was desperate from debts, no intent to harm. But the judge shook his head. "This is organized fraud, exploiting family trust." Verdict: Logan sentenced to 6 years imprisonment for organized fraud and fake threats, plus full restitution of embezzled money and mandatory probation after release. The ruling rang out. The courtroom fell silent. Logan was led away, face pale. I stood anxiously looking at my parents. They didn't meet my eyes, just leaving silently. I drove home, tears streaming, knowing this was the price, but relieved it had ended. Sometime after the trial, as things settled, I decided to visit Logan in prison, not for reconciliation, but to definitively end the distorted brotherly relationship of many years. It was a frigid winter morning, light snow falling outside the car window. The prison on the Ohio outskirts, high walls, heavy atmosphere. I registered for a visit and waited in the room with other families, silent crying mothers, downcast children. Anxiety rose thinking of the upcoming meeting. Had Logan changed at all, or was he still the same? Logan appeared visibly deteriorated, no longer the familiar confident flamboyance, but his eyes still showed resentment and defensiveness. He was much thinner, hair disheveled, wearing prisoner uniform. He sat behind the glass, picking up the receiver, voice wary. Logan asked, "Why are you here? To gloat seeing me like this?" Almost immediately, Logan began justifying himself, voice urgent and resentful. "You don't understand," he said. "I was cornered. Debts piled up, no other choice. I didn't want to hurt Mom and Dad, circumstances forced me." His voice trembled, but eyes kept evading as if he couldn't face his own words. I didn't interrupt. I waited for him to finish, then spoke slowly and calmly. "And what about Mom and Dad?" I asked. "Now they live in a cramped rental, scraping for meals, old age with no security. All because of the story you fabricated, forcing them to sell the house and give you money." I paused, then continued clearly. "And you didn't just take their money, you destroyed the family's trust." Logan was silent momentarily, then shook his head, clinging to familiar escape. "You don't know my pressure," he argued. "I'm still young. I was pushed into it. Easy for you standing outside to judge." I looked straight at Logan and mentioned what he didn't expect I knew. "And you planned the exact same script on Aunt Susan," I said. "I heard it all, right in the cafe." Logan's face visibly paled. He gripped the receiver tightly, eyes darting as if seeking escape. "It's not what you think," Logan said low. "I hadn't done anything yet. You're blowing it out of proportion." A heavy silence stretched. Then Logan's tone shifted, low and bitter. "You're the real betrayer," he said slowly, words restrained. "You handed everything to police, putting me here. If you'd stayed quiet, it wouldn't have gone this far. All along you've watched me fall, then turned away." I didn't raise my voice. I said slowly, each word firm. "Logan, silence and covering up are what made you this way." I looked into his eyes. "Silence isn't protection. Silence enables. I did it not to harm you, but to end this cycle before you hurt more people." Logan didn't respond. He gripped the receiver, eyes flashing anger, but this time no justifications came. The visiting room sank into heavy silence, as if words were exhausted. I left the visiting room with heaviness but decisiveness, knowing this was the last time facing Logan as a brother. I stood looking at him one final time through the glass. "I hope prison time helps you reflect." The prison door closed behind me and I stepped out, leaving the past and mistakes behind bars. Snow fell thicker, but my heart felt lighter. Anxiety ended, replaced by peace. Home, Rachel and Lily waited, and I knew this was my real family. After all those events, I returned to everyday life, focusing on work and my small family as a way to slowly regain the stable rhythm that had once been disrupted. In the first weeks after the trial and the meeting with Logan, I felt like someone who had just escaped a storm, physically exhausted, mentally drained, but still having to carry on. My auditing job in Columbus became a familiar anchor. Precise numbers, detailed reports, and online meetings helped me forget somewhat. I worked extra hours to make up for lost time, but without the old pressure. Now it was how I affirmed stability. Coming home, Rachel always waited with a warm smile. Lily ran into my arms with innocent school stories. We spent weekends strolling in the park, barbecuing outdoors, or simply reading together in the rental living room. Gradually, life regained its rhythm. Mornings waking to Lily's laughter, evenings with family dinners, nights falling asleep holding Rachel. But anxiety still lingered, Had it really ended? I told myself to be strong, step by step reclaiming peace, not letting the past pull me back. Sometime later, when things stabilized, Rachel and I decided to buy another house, not large or showy, but enough to be a true safe haven for us and Lily. It was about 6 months later when we'd adjusted to the rental but realized we needed a permanent home. We searched carefully. A single-story wooden house in the town suburbs with 3 bedrooms, a small backyard for Lily to play, and a sturdy fence. We moved in gradually, painting walls warm cream, hanging family photos, installing extra security cameras. Lily was excited about her own room. Rachel decorated the kitchen her way, and I felt truly secure. No more worrying about sudden calls or aggressive knocks. The house was simple but a symbol of rebirth, helping me regain stable rhythm. Our new life unfolded quietly and peacefully. No more threatening calls, no fear of intrusion, just ordinary but fulfilling days. Every morning I woke to birdsong outside the window, brewed coffee for Rachel, and took Lily to school. Work remained steady, but now I made time for old hobbies, reading finance books, morning runs, playing guitar for Lily. No more reproachful texts from Mom, no flashy Logan posts on social media. He was in prison, and my world was separate. We held small birthdays for Lily, inviting neighbor friends, laughing over cake. Evenings, Rachel and I sat on the porch stargazing, talking about the future. Maybe another child or a family trip. Past anxiety faded, replaced by simple joy. Ordinary moments but complete, making me realize true happiness lies in peace. But then one day my parents came, looking much older and wearier than the last time I saw them, bringing a belated apology and a desire to mend things. It was a spring afternoon. I was fixing the car in the garage, Lily playing in the yard. A gentle knock sounded, not frantic as before. Rachel opened the door and called, "Declan, your parents are here." I froze, wiped my hands on a rag, and stepped to the porch. They stood there, Dad hunched holding his hat, Mom leaning on him, faces wrinkled, hair white. They looked visibly aged, Dad gaunt, Mom trembling. "Declan, can we talk?" Dad said, voice hoarse, no longer authoritarian. I nodded, inviting them into the living room, but heart full of anxiety. Why were they here? For money? Blame? Rachel took Lily inside, leaving us private. I listened without interrupting or interjecting. I let them speak fully, knowing if I cut in now, they'd never say what had been bottled up so long. Dad bowed his head low, voice trembling. "I'm sorry, Declan. I was wrong to pressure you, to call you selfish just because you wouldn't sacrifice for your brother. I let favoritism blind me, and only now do I realize it." Mom sobbed. "I'm sorry, son. I didn't believe you, blamed everything on you, turned my back when you needed me most. I thought protecting Logan was right, but I abandoned my own son." Dad continued, voice choking. "We lost the house, money, even Logan to prison. But the deepest pain is realizing we pushed you out of the family ourselves." Mom nodded continuously, tears unending. "We don't dare hope you'll return as before. We just want you to know. We truly regret it. I chose to forgive, not to return as before, but to release the burden of resentment I'd carried for years." "I forgive you," I said calmly, "not because I've forgotten what happened, but because I don't want to live with resentment anymore. It's weighed on me too long." I saw faint hope flicker in their eyes, but I didn't stop there. "But we won't go back to how it was. I have my own family, and my greatest responsibility now is protecting Rachel and Lily." That forgiveness felt like lifting a stone from my chest. I felt lighter, calmer, but clear-headed enough to know that relief doesn't mean erasing boundaries. I stated clearly, no beating around. From now on, no money matters, no borrowing. You won't interfere in my life, Rachel's or Lily's, and I won't sacrifice one-sidedly again. I've done enough. They nodded silently. Dad said softly, voice low, "We understand. We just hope sometimes you'll let us see you and the granddaughter." My parents accepted it in silence, as if they too knew the relationship could never return as before. As they left, sad smiles lingered on weary faces. I closed the door, standing still a long while. Inside was a mix of serenity and clarity. I had forgiven but not forgotten, and would never allow the past to repeat. One afternoon, watching Rachel and Lily play in the new house, laughter light and peaceful, I reflected on the entire journey. Rachel chasing Lily around the yard, the girl giggling, golden afternoon sun through the trees. I stood by the window, coffee in hand, memories flooding. The old argument, disownment, house vandalism, Logan's deception, trials. Past anxiety, now lessons. I realized blood ties don't always mean love, and family can't exist without respect and boundaries. I understood forgiveness isn't opening the door for further hurt, but freeing myself from past control. I no longer lived to prove right or wrong in anyone's eyes. I chose forward with clarity, holding necessary boundaries, leaving old wounds behind where they belong. My story closes with a clear lesson. Sometimes protecting family isn't sacrificing to exhaustion, but daring to say no when needed, and daring to leave unworthy relationships. Only by releasing at the right time could I keep lasting peace for those I love most, and for myself.